Hello everyone, welcome to Epic Work Items Migration Weekly. It's 1st of February, and the first discussion item is a bunch of follow-ups. So Nicholas, you want to verbalize? Like I see there are some questions around the BE sync that we had earlier today.
Eugenia, do you have anything you want to verbalize before we jump to point two?
Yes, I guess we can say I actually closed the issue because I moved the list, like we discussed in the last meeting, the list of tracking feature parity, move it to a separate issue and turn the previous issue into just what was blocking, what was needed for the migration. So that is now closed. If there's anything that comes up, I can reopen it again, but I think we're not blocked from anything in the workstream one.
Cool, great work. Cool, then I will do an update quickly on the syncing part of the work items. So we synced the updates of basic fields. We still have like the state closed and open in progress. We add some logging and custom errors, so we see issues quicker. And we still need to fix the Epic promotion, like issue to Epic promotion. That's work in progress. Can we enable feature flag already in production? I would say no, because there are a few things that we don't have covered yet. So first, we want maybe to wait for the logging merge request to have more insights. And the second more important thing is check if we really don't create any other association and how it influences other stuff like DORA metrics and the relative position, which I think is the most crucial part. And we will discuss with Alexandro in his part of the update. And yeah, once this is covered, we are close to getting this done. We should be able to work on some validations on production data that we discussed in today's backend engineering sync meeting, and we can start syncing associations. So we can enable feature flag and see items already in production, like enable it from in production at some point. Any questions about that or anything you want to add?
Complete like novice question, but is there something about open and closed state that makes it more difficult to sync, or it's just we're doing things in order?
No, the thing is that this is a separate service. We have an update Epic service, and there's like a close and reopen Epic service. And these are just two merge requests. That's why.
And what happens with, so with issue to Epic promotion, we have to look out for that in order, because that's another vector by which somebody could create an Epic, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, this is already covered. Like it would already create a work item, but it's not completely in sync because for issue to Epic promotion, we rewrite the description and re-render the markdown because it's different, the Epic. And so the description gets updated later, not in the transaction. So we need to spawn another update. And this is what we will see in all of these conversations. Small things will appear that just gets stuff out of sync. And so that's why we want to have this validation to immediately see what gets out of sync when these parameters change. And then we can adapt. This is like an ongoing progress of like thinking everything works fine, seeing that it's not, and do it again.
Cool. What's your perception of like the amount of work we have ahead of us in the syncing work? Like how far through it are we, do you think?
Basic field syncing 80% done. Associations at the very beginning.
Cool, thanks.
So are we on to C now? Okay.
If there are no other questions, yes.
Yeah, so there's an FYI that you can read, but the blocker question for me is again with the relative positions. I've posted the link there, but I will try to briefly describe it. So for epics right now, the relative position that is stored in the epics table is basically only used for displaying that epic in the epic hierarchy in its siblings, right? So if you have an epic hierarchy, then that relative position describes the position of the epic between its sibling. Is it higher or lower between the same children? Now, when you transition that to the issues, that's a whole different story, because that relative position is global, and it's global throughout the group hierarchy. So like you can go to a group level issue list and start dragging issues around. So issues from different projects will get a position in that entire list, and that translates then again to all of the issue boards, because it's a single value used all over the place. Now my thinking is that we can copy whatever we have in the epics table into the issues table. I just want to make sure that's correct, because then when we come to, but when we get to the time when we want to display the epic work items, how that happened. Would it happen that in whatever issue boards that I'm having, a group level, project level, I don't know, will these work item epics start popping up in my issue boards, or like what's the, or maybe we never show epic work items in the existing issue boards, only in the new boards? I don't know if there is anything I need to be aware of when transitioning those. And one other thing is that these relative position things that we will sync over to the work item epic will get out of sync pretty fast with the legacy thing. Because like whenever you drag and drop, like you move an issue either before or after some work item, so that one gets pushed down or upwards as well. Even if it's not displayed behind the scenes, we do all sorts of rebalancing and all sorts of stuff. So that will get out of sync with the legacy epic relative position. That should be okay, I think, because the main usage of that will be copied into the hierarchy table. But just to give you a sort of a sense of where I'm coming from with this stuff.
I think there might be a confusion about copying the epic relative position that is going to be copied to parent link relative position. Then the field relative position in work item will have the same function than the issue today. So it won't have any functionality in the epic. It won't be copied from the epic. There's two relative position we copy from the epic. One is the column relative position, and that goes to parent link, so a different table. And the other one is the epic board that also has a position. In that case, I left in the comment, I think the idea Jan suggested in one of the issues was to create a new column in the epic board relative position table. So we keep the same record. So the epic that we need to keep them in place, the epic record will keep the relative position, and will also link the work item to that relative position. But I think the work item relative position that will remain empty because it doesn't have an equivalent epic functionality.
Yeah, I would not want to keep it empty because there is some work that is being done when that field is empty. There is a asynchronous job that needs to actually fill it in. We cannot really have, because that breaks boards, I think, or something along those lines. There is some issue with having the relative positions being null when you drag and drop things over those kind of items. So like we need to populate it with something. And then the other thing is how those work item epics appear when you enable them in the issue lists and so on, right? In the work item lists. That's another thing. So like I understand that we can, from whatever validation that we implement, we can skip the relative position from the epics table to be checked against the relative position in the issues table, right? That's not
they're not the same.
That's not something we should bother with, but there is still layers on like, do we need to care that in the issue lists at the time when we enable epic work items, there will be some epic work items. Maybe that's okay, maybe that's fine. I don't know.
What happens today when you create a work item in the group level with that relative position? How is it populated? Because I think the scope at the moment in issues is just for project. But what would happen when you create a work item at the group level? What would be the scope for that relative position?
Yeah, I think
it should be the same as a new one.
I think it's added to the bottom of the whatever the largest value is. So then you add an offset or something like that, and it's added to the bottom. But yeah.
Yeah, the scope of relative positions, I think, within a namespace, because you can manually drag and drop within any issue list in a group or project, I believe. And so that same relative position makes all the issues relative to one another all the way up. Even if we're not showing the epics in like the issue list for the time being.
Is it just me, or did everyone not hear what?
I think I missed half of that, but
yeah, your connection.
Yes.
Sorry, Gabe, you want to try again? Okay, yeah, he's gonna type it.
So if we are cool with copying over whatever we have in the epics and then showing them in the whatever issue lists at the time when we enable that, that's totally fine, unblocks me completely, so that should be okay. Is my understanding correct there though? I'd like a confirmation.
We wouldn't copy it because that relative position, it would break the scope. That relative position is only for children. The epic doesn't have scope.
I mean into the issues table, what happens if we do copy it into the issues table? All that will happen from my perspective, from my understanding, is that when you have a list of issues, like 10 issues, now in between them, when you enable epic work items, you'll start seeing some of these epics creeping in, right? Because now
you mean children, child issues?
No, I mean at the issue lists, like group level issue lists or other places where we have issue lists. Maybe in boards, I don't know, because it's the same relative position used everywhere, right?
We would use the relative position field in work item.
Yeah.
Yes, and that one would have to be calculated instead of copied. We don't bring anything from the epic. We calculate it in based on the other work items in the group or the project.
Do we? When do we do
because
that?
the epic doesn't use the same relative position for the list.
Yeah, no, yeah. So what I was trying to say is, can we use it? Like, what?
No, because
otherwise there's a lot
different.
of extra work that we need to do to accomplish that, right?
It would have to be calculated, yeah, I think, in scope to the group. If we copy those...
Okay, let me ask you this, that where would you see the epics, the work item epics being placed? Is it at the bottom of the list?
I don't know what the calculation would do, I guess. I don't know how it's being calculated for issues. That's the thing. But we should do the same we're doing for issues.
So here's a scenario. We enable the backfilling. We copy, like we create a copy of the epics into the issues table, right? We create the work items. We populate that relative position being, let's say we decide it goes to the bottom of the list.
Mm.
Then after that, a new issue is being created. So you get added again to the bottom of the list, or you start dragging and dropping issues around. So that changes again the position of the epic as well. Even if it's not shown, when you do the rebalancing, you need to spread everything in that entire namespace hierarchy so that they have places to drag and drop things around. So you end up in a similar position as if you just copy whatever value you have right now. Because at the end of the day, they will be still intermingled in between all of the issues. But I don't see
but in
why
the
that will
epic
be
that
a
doesn't
problem
make
though. Maybe I'd like to get some. I don't
yeah,
know,
it's something that definitely is more investigation.
Do you expect that you would also sync the relative position back from issues table to the epics table? I'm just curious about the scenario when in the next phase you allow changing this position, for example, on issue boards table. So user notices that there is this epic work item, so he's confused, so he moves it down or up, and then this will basically would change back when user, for example, updates the original epic again, like we sync it again, the epic to the issue record later. So if there would be some scenario when basically we would lose these relative position updates later.
I don't think we need to sync it when the legacy epic is updated again. Because that syncing only should go into the hierarchy table, right? Because the epic's position is only important within the hierarchy or board. So that's the only places where you need to sync it. I don't think you need to sync it back to the issues record, basically, right? So even if it changes, I think just keep it whatever value it gets there.
So you would just set it during backfilling and not in other.
That's my idea right now, because like I don't see a point in kind of syncing it all the time because it just gets changed all the time. It's just like I don't see why, but I was trying to bring this up to like understand if there is if anyone sees any like big issues from user experience, the fact that we will start showing these things up and they may appear within like between the issues and so on, or maybe we thought about it and we'll take a different route where we don't display epic work items in current lists and boards and so on, and only when someone creates a new list, a new board, will they be allowed to include the epics. I don't know. This is why I'm bringing it, because it's something that is a bit over my head.
So I think only scenario where that might be a problem is if we provide an option for users to revert back to like the older Epics experience, where they would expect that, okay, they had a hierarchy widget with items reordered in a certain preference, and they now want to revert back to older experience, and they expect that child issues and epics are going to show exact same order which they set in the new experience, which I don't think is a deal breaker in any way. I mean, users are aware that they have opted for a beta experience or a new experience. So if they want to revert back, then they would have to redo those ordering updates, which is like a minor drawback or a minor inconvenience.
Amanda,
but the children should remain. Sorry.
Amanda, do you plan to expose any views in the near term that commingle issues and epics and where you can like stack them against each other?
Near term, not in the next 3 to 4 milestones, no.
When epics become work items, would that be something that's available sort of like shortly after?
We're actually going to kick off research 1610 to start looking at that. co-mingling of information. So it really depends on how long it takes for the research and then our availability to schedule it. But Epic migration comes first. So it would, ideally it'd be first half.
So we
Yeah,
don't know what the
especially
expectation.
Yeah, sorry, Nicholas.
We don't know what's the expectation where epics will pop up in the issues and boards lists and at what position they should be. So we don't know that yet. Okay.
So I guess worst case scenario probably then would be we copy whatever we have right now to just avoid extra work on the issues table. And then after the user research and so on, if we have more clarity, we run just another update over all of the epics and like set whatever we think the position should be. But again, that is going to be very short-lived. Like once someone drags over one issue, there is a possibility that the epic's position changes. It's all I'm trying to say.
Will the position
have it on the epics table to keep the original value in the epics table until we have this decision, maybe?
Question, will the relative position of the epics themselves retain their own position, even if there are issues interspersed or taking priority?
Yes, that's on separate.
Yes.
Yes. So once we migrate, that's something I wanted to say when Kushal was speaking. When the migration, we will retain the order of the children. So this is not affecting children. That case, even if there are issues in the middle, they should maintain the order. This relative position is the general list of issues and the relative position of issues in boards.
Where are we storing that? Sorry, real quick. Where are we storing that relative position? Is that a separate table that's going to be associated to the issues? For the children within an epic.
Yeah, the children in the epic is in the same table. In work items is in a separate table. So the epic relative position field should be copied to another table that's called parent link. And that's the thing that should be kept together.
Okay, so we're not going to use the relative position column within the issues table for that.
No, it's confusing because it's the same name, but that relative position is actually for the epic when the epic is a child. So when the epic is a child, it has that, and the parent is actually parent ID. We don't have a different table for epic links. We store it in as an epic. So when an epic is a child, it has a relative position.
Okay, so then, and I think
it's not
this
a child,
was,
it doesn't have it.
Gotcha. And I think we threw this out there earlier, but if we just use in the issues table after the migration for epics, if we just use null instead of migrating that over, what's the drawbacks to that?
I think it shouldn't be migrated over because that relative position is in base being a child. So that could be 0 because it's the first child of the list, for example. Then if you put it in the scope of a group, you don't want it to be 0 because there could be many other work items before. So I think the relative position of the work item should be calculated and not copied from the legacy epic.
But what should be the value? Like I understand you want it to be calculated. Okay, so how
I think it should be null.
Move it to the start is an option of rearranging it.
Yeah, so if you create a group level work item today, relative position starts as null.
Yes. The one I'm checking now in the console is nil.
Yeah.
But then there is a synchronous job that goes and updates that record. So what I'm saying is we don't want to do that, to set nulls on 300,000 new records and make 300,000 new updates again just to set the position for these epics. So I'm trying to avoid hitting the database with a lot of these updates because updating a issue record is quite expensive. I think there is also an index on the position and so on. So it's, I don't know. I don't think that this team will be happy with that amount of work.
Would it be solved if we don't mix the type of work items? So if we don't show the epic work items in the list of issues when you go to a group issues? I thought we were not going to see the epic there, but if we are, we need to calculate the relative position.
No, that's right. We're not going to, at least in the first MVC.
We will show on the epics version, the epic board, right? Which is meant to be a clone of the issues board. But on that board, we should not show issues and tasks.
Yeah, so we are going to show it on a work item list. It's going to be filtered to just epics.
Right. And the epic.
So
board.
in that case, like I'm confused as to when this asynchronous job is run to change it from null to whatever, an integer or whatever it is.
I think it's triggered right after creation of the work item, somewhere there. Like once it's completed to create, either in after commit or like right after creation, it just goes asynchronously and updates it to be at the bottom.
Yeah, I was skipping it today, but I think what we need to do probably is try to figure out how we're going to use the the relative position in the work item for epic type and for group level type. So because that's the thing, the legacy epic don't have these properties, so it's not something we need to migrate. It's more finding out what we're going to do with this property with this new type. So it's something missing more than something we have to copy. This is not coming from the epic.
Yeah, I think we need to look into when it's changed from null, because just locally I'm trying to get it to change from null and I can't. Even if I show it a group level work item within the group level issue list, it's still null. So I think that is updated only when I actually move something.
When you create, yeah. I think it was when it's created only, because today I was keeping this worker when we create the work item. It's called issues placement worker.
Let's do this async. So actually the outcome of this is we should just not do all the updates. That's what we need to care about. We don't have a decision yet how they will be displayed at some point. So we need to wait anyway. And we only focus on not doing 300,000 updates on a database.
Does that sound good? Alexandru, do we have all of the questions for product that we think we're going to need to answer?
Yeah, I can re-ask them in written format. I think I did my best to explain what's going on in the comment there that is linked in the document. So if you have any other additional questions or you want clarifications or you need me to try and put it into a different way, let me know. I don't know how I can explain it better.
But I think we have no decision until research has been conducted.
Yeah, but like to move on and not add this trend on the database with additional hits on top of what already updated. It's just like copy it over, and then if we have to, do another update, which is not desirable, but I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
That works for me, thank you.
Melissa, you want to verbalize the discussion point from John?
Yeah, so this is something that John and I had been discussing based on basically the great progress and seeing the Epic work item in our test environment, right, where it's nearly complete as far as like a functional work item type, and really the thing that's holding it back is the migration, right, and that side of things. So what we're thinking about is there a way to enable a version of this that's customer facing in this upcoming quarter? An example that I'll cite is the component catalog that was recently built by another team at GitLab. What they did is they gave customers an experience that they could opt into that is incomplete, right? The new component catalog does not have all the features that are in the old experience, but they basically created a path for customers to say, I want in because of these other benefits, and it's okay if these other things don't exist, right? In our case, that might be boards and roadmaps for epics, right? Like we give people the ability to opt in, but they'll know they don't have these things, but they want to experience, they need experience anyway. That's one example of how we could do this, right? But that's something we wanted to bring to the group of just, could we achieve something like this in this next quarter? Kushal, I don't know if you want to verbalize the
Yeah,
too.
so John has mentioned a couple of technical things that we need to complete and have the decisions on, like backfilling and delegation of work items except for IID, and testing of boards and roadmaps. So as far as like boards and roadmap compatibility is concerned, we decided that we are going to retrofit existing Epic's API to point to work items table. So APIs, both GraphQL and REST, continue to work as it is. One question that I had was like what the URL is going to be. I would assume that if you are going to update APIs to point to work items table, then URLs will also behave the same, where for users, any bookmarks do not break. Just that when they open that URL, it will open the work items view. But I'm still not sure whether that is something that we have actually aimed for.
I believe we should have redirects so that people's bookmarks don't break.
Yeah, but besides redirect, like, I mean, is the page going to show work items view even when the browser URL is still reading it as Apex instead of work items?
I think the URL is okay as work items if that's what you're asking, and like an ID, and then the screen itself is the one that tells you it's an epic.
Okay.
So I personally don't know if we can do it in next quarter, because it's like before we can let customers interact with the Epic work items, we need to have all of those things that John mentioned there completed. So basically you need to have the Epic model slimmed down to only ID and IID in order to be able to interact with the work item, with the Epic as an work item, like to change its title, description, and so on. Because then we don't have to sync it back into the legacy Epic, right? I think we said this at the very beginning, we cannot have customers have both legacy epics and the work item epics, even if it's a beta or whatever. If they get to that state, they should not expect any kind of syncing between the things.
What if it was new customers only, like new groups only had the option to basically start with the new experience or start with the legacy one?
Yeah, then we need to disable the legacy. Like if they start with a new experience, we need to disable the legacy thing. I don't know what drawbacks there may be. I think that's okay, that's doable, but we need to disable that stuff completely in a way. Because like we can give them that, right? but we would not have the API, the legacy APIs working, like all that stuff will not be working for them. They will need to onboard on the new experience altogether. And there will be no going back sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
From a UX perspective, Melissa, wouldn't they, if they're like interacting with cross-group records, they would see two different experiences?
Yeah, I'm thinking like this would be for like net new accounts. Like someone who is just starting with GitLab could opt into
And then
this.
the idea would be they're likely not interacting with existing groups. I see. Okay.
Donald,
And
good
also
question.
like they cannot have work items epics in one group, but legacy epics in a different group, right? Because you cannot, obviously. But
Yeah, maybe we could scope it to like net new top level groups on SaaS, right? As a segment.
But how do you prevent them from being invited to existing groups that are not in the new experience?
I mean, you don't have to, but they will not be capable of adding an epic, a legacy epic as a child of a work item epic. So there will be all sorts of broken things because of that, right?
Well, we do have compatibility that we're working on between issuables and work items. I'm not as concerned about that. I'm just concerned about the UX like experience.
Can you expand on the scenario, Amanda?
I mean, I don't know how what the potential for this to happen is, but I don't think we can prevent it from happening. So brand new customer comes on, they're on a brand new top level namespace. We constrain that to the new environment, but then I don't know why, but they get invited to an existing group on SaaS, which is the old experience. And I think from a backend, we're okay because of the compatibility work we're doing, but they just see two different types of experiences if they navigate to a record in a different group.
Oh, I think that's okay.
Okay, that was my question.
So Donald, you asked a very good question of like, why would they opt in? I think there is some additional value. Like we have assignees on epics right now. We have the ability to relate different work item types to epics, which is another thing that's been asked for, like blocked by an issue as an example. And then some customers, like we know we're gonna have more value coming up in the new experience, and some customers might want to opt out of going through a migration. And it's a way for us to get feedback. And yeah, we could enable epics on projects. That could be where we, with this pocket of people, could be where we test some of these like new features. And mostly I'm trying to get us to like get this into a user's hands so we can get feedback. That's sort of like the end goal. Alexandru?
I think from technical perspective, the work items at the group level and the syncing of the epics are like can be worked on in parallel, and they don't intersect as long as we don't intermingle together the epics and the legacy epics and the work item epics, right? So if you want to present that side of the story where you can have epics as work items and you can work all of that, do all of that, assignees and all that stuff, that can be done for sure, as long as we don't have to mix in together the two things. And again, that's not as much a responsibility, at least from where I'm standing technically, that's not as much a responsibility of this group because we're dealing with slightly different thing, I think.
I'm not against the idea, but I do want to point out that some of these new features are only half baked. You'll see the widget, but all the downstream or upstream kind of related features aren't there yet. So like right now we have assignees in the next milestone to work out all of those different points. You expect to see things assigned to me in different views and it wouldn't pop up, for example. So that's just one example, but different things like epics at the project. Well, what does that do to the roadmaps? What does that do, to these different related things? So I would just want to do some thorough thinking about what things are we going to turn on for this preview, and are they really show ready, or do we have to do a couple of things just to get them ready?
Will we allow assignees for epics on work items from the start? So there's one good reason why we should not do it per user, but per group, exactly for this, because the feature parity is different. And so you would not see the assignee on the legacy epic, but you would see it on the work item.
But if someone's opting into a beta experimental feature, it is going to be different from somewhere else, sort of by design.
Yeah, and I think if we're clear about what those are, if we're doing blog posts or documentation about like, hey, the beta is this, and this is the differences that you're going to see, and these are the hurdles you're going to have, gaps, whatever. I think that's okay, but I don't want to do it unexpectedly. I'd be surprised, but yeah.
No, this would be an opt-in for those people that want to see a very early version of this. It could even be used, like, for example, by sales when they're showing the feature experience, by our solutions architects. There are customers out there who like have told us, I mean, they're like, we want to be guinea pigs, right? Like we want to get the very early versions and we want to like co-develop with you. This would be a way for them to do that.
Could we, I'm not sure if there's any technical issue, but could we roll it out only for subgroups actually? So customers could create their subgroups and experiment there.
Maybe. As a next step, I'll create an issue where we can keep discussing different approaches to this and like make sure that one, that it's like technically feasible, right? And two, that it's like we scope it in the right way where it's like communicated in like a valuable place, and like also ensure like what is it that they're getting and would it be enough at this point with what's there for them to like play with something. Okay.
Maybe a milestone, a checkpoint would be to have it for one of our test groups and us play with it a bit. Like, I don't know, create a demo based on what you want to present, excluding completely the legacy epics. So this is what you can get on that, and see what are the gaps, and is it really something that we can go into and onboard someone on, or is it just the gaps are too big to get someone to use it? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
mean,
idea.
we kind of already have that, right? On the plan stage. Like they're not group level work items. Sorry, epic group epic work items right now are not synced to legacy epics within that within the plan stage group. So we can kind of play around with it there and see where the gaps are already.
Okay, we're over time, so we can continue the discussion issue.
Yeah, will you share when you create that issue, Melissa? Will you share it in one of the channels, please? Thank you. Oh, that's a wave, not a raised hand, Alexandra.
Yeah, it's not my fault. It's Zoom's. That's a raised hand.
Yeah, they look pretty similar.
It's like the link and hyperlink in GitLab. Drives me nuts.
I
Need
mean,
more rotation.
I do that all the time. I click the wrong one.
3 times a day I hit the wrong one, and every time I shake my fist. Sorry. Bye, folks.
Bye, y'all.
Deal.